Good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening for those of you a little further along on good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening for those of you a little further along on good morning. So sorry, I just had another window open that was giving me dreadful feedback, so I've knocked that out. So hi everyone, welcome to our session where we're going to look at the 5 biggest trends affecting both VR and AR in the enterprise sector. And you're joined by myself, James Watson, founder of XRTech Marketing, and I will also allow Thomas to introduce himself.
Thanks, James. Yeah, we are both members of the VRARA training committee, and I am a co-CEO of 3Spin, a company that provides a learning platform, and I'm also a lecturer at Darmstadt University of Applied Sciences.
Excellent, thank you, Thomas. There were meant to be 3 of us. Unfortunately, Emily Smits, who is also co-chair of the VRARA training committee, is running a little bit late. We hope she may join us at some point, but we will wait and see. So, top 5 trends. That's a tricky one, given what you think, how much has happened over the past, well, geez, a lot's happened in the past 2 months, let alone sort of the past 12 months. But we have given it some thought, and we have sort of come up with what we think are the 5 trends. Feel free to disagree or agree with what we've come up with. But I think, if you think of the activity across, hardware, across raising money, across use cases, analytics, all this stuff, there's lots to talk about. So, Thomas, give me your top 5 trends in AR and VR in the enterprise sector.
Yeah, it is a tough question. I try to help myself to actually focus a little bit more on training as we are in that committee. And there's a lot happening in enterprise, but I think specifically in enterprise learning, what I see is that everything is going mobile. And it's kind of a trend that already emerged last year due to COVID, but it continues strong, I believe. So I still consider it a trend of this year. A second one that I encounter a lot as we are exactly in that business is no-code creation. As a lot of companies are now trying to bring stuff to scale stuff, not only have one pilot project, but now it's really necessary to do it because of COVID, for example. Collaboration, obviously, I consider a very strong trend as physical travel was difficult, and another one is off-the-shelf content. So I believe we're already at the point where not everyone is building everything themselves, but we have certain topics that everyone needs and that companies do offer. And then one interesting trend for me is also to see that in the past we had mostly a hard skill training, and now a lot more people see value in soft skill training. So that's my top 5 for learning in enterprise. What do you think, James? What are do we have overlapping? Now you're on mute.
We do actually have overlap, which is good, right? Because if they were completely different, that would mean we think there are 10 top trends, but actually three of ours overlap. So I also, and we can dive into them in a bit more, but so 3 of ours overlap absolutely. So soft skills, I agree. That's something that has definitely jumped up the agenda massively, I think, in the past year. So that's something we can talk about. Also collaboration. I mean, if we didn't have that in the top trends, we'd have probably not really been following the market. So the move towards collaboration is you can't really have a top 5 trends and not have that in there. And no code. So although mine was slightly different because it was no code, low code. But so I mean, it's these buzzwords that you see a lot now. There's a lot of low. I mean, we can get into that, because I think low code is a bit of a fake, really. But anyway, and I think no code can be overused as well. So those are the three that we overlap on. The other ones I've got are you have to mention metaverse.
Yes, of course.
Metaverse mania. So that's one that I will.
Everyone's talking about it while no one really knows what it is.
Everyone's talking about it, and everyone is thinking it means something different. And if you ask someone what is the metaverse, I think not only would you get different answers, I think you get a lot of people who couldn't actually explain it at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
They'd just be like, well, it's kind of like the internet of something. But so I think anyway, so we can talk about that one, which is pretty funny. So I've got metaverse mania. I've got a shift towards more sort of analytics and ROI focus for activity, particularly in the trading space. So those are the two that different. So looking at those areas. So good overlap for us not to be completely disagreeing, but also some areas that we can slightly disagree on. So your different ones obviously are mobile and off the shelf, which I think are interesting. Why don't we start with mobile? So why don't you talk to us about what you feel the shift and the importance and what that means for the sector?
Yeah. I think just looking 2 years back, most of VR stuff at least was happening on tethered devices connected to PCs and that were provided by organizations to their employees, for example, somewhere in a dedicated room. And I think that the trend that is going towards mobile is really driven by COVID, as many other things as well, because employees couldn't really go into organizations anymore, at least many of them. So these super fancy dedicated rooms that have been built with a lot of money weren't worth much anymore at the beginning of last year. So I think that was really a big factor that resulted in this everything mobile trend, that organizations are now able to provide mobile headsets or mobile devices to their staff so that they can learn anywhere, even at home. And I think that is, I think once people start using mobile, there's no going back, because it has so many advantages that even there are also disadvantages. I think most people favor them because they consider the advantages more important than the disadvantages, like having low powered devices that cannot render 6 million polygons unless you have a 5G connection that allows remote rendering, which also costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it strikes me that, and funny, when you said mobile, I was thinking
smartphone.
I was thinking smartphone. So
no. Yeah, I mean, it's part of it, but I can see
it is mobile. You're
confusion,
right. Yeah, no. But as in, what you mean is untethered, but you're mobile.
Exactly.
So it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, as the hardware improves and the experiences are better, and 5G and streaming and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll be a real niche market for tethered headsets. I guess you think of the VRARA and really sort of when you need that absolute incredible fidelity, but that's going to be quite niche, and it is quite niche now, especially with the headsets costing, what are they, sort of $6 or $7 grand. So yeah, I mean, I think
when less people buy it, even less than before, then the prices probably have to increase.
Yeah, I think, but I think there's always room in the market. I mean, VRARA is brilliant in the area they operate in, and that's where they're happy to operate. And there's definitely a need for that. But I think if we're talking particularly for VR to have an impact, a broader impact, it has to be one of these guys, behind me, who who are going to help drive that adoption when it's $700 for an enterprise headset, which will come down. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that is mobile.
I agree. I agree also about the tethered headsets.
Yeah,
it's we're working also a lot in the airline space, and there is a really cool demo from VRARA where you are in the tower on an airport, up in the tower, and you can see like the planes in the very far end, like a kilometer away, and you can still read the number on the name of the plane on the body, and even these small, the small text on the displays and such. It's incredible, but it's a very specific use case.
Yeah, and a use case where £7,000 or whatever it will be for the headset is perfectly acceptable, because you're talking about plane safety and not having mid-air collisions and stuff. So that in those scenarios, having a really, really high-end headset makes perfect sense. And yeah, I can understand it. Okay, so that's mobile stroke untethered. So that's that one. So let's get on to metaverse. So my one that differs from yours, metaverse. So it's quite mad if you think about it. The term. I mean, I know the term's been around for ages, and the origin of it and blah. But it's literally, would you say, the last 3 months? Do you think where it's really exploded? Is it 3 months? Maybe less.
Yeah. I think probably one of the initiating things were the talk that Mark Zuckerberg gave. I think because he mentioned it, and that's mainstream, right?
Yeah.
Mainstream, but more people listen, and then if they hear the term, and now everyone uses it, even it has been around before.
It seems like, and it seems like it's kind of taken on its own life, right? Suddenly metaverse is used in every possible way, and not necessarily the right way. I think it's also been fueled by NFTs. So I think when you have, that NFT that sold, the original one that sold sort of, I don't know, how long was it? 5 or 6 months ago, the one that sold for over $1 million, I think, which really sort of suddenly everyone's like, what are NFTs, non-fungible tokens? What's that? And of course, that fits with the metaverse, because it's like, well, you'd get your NFT and you'd put it in the metaverse, and then you go see it or whatever. So I think that whole NFT thing fueled, the whole metaverse conversation.
I mean, you have a strong marketing background, and I believe the term has really been overused also because of marketing reasons. If the big players start using it, then existing players who haven't been using it before start using it for the same stuff they always have been doing. So nothing they did has changed in any way, but they're just using a new term because it's trendy, and if people start looking for it, then people want to be found.
You're right. I mean, I see companies using it all the time now. We're building the metaverse, or all this sort of stuff. And generally speaking, it's rubbish. They're doing the same thing they did before, but they're putting a different label on it. And I think I understand people want to drive their business forward, and you need to kind of be where people are looking. But equally, it's a term that is so misunderstood. What are you selling, and what are people understanding or not understanding by what you're talking about? So if you use a term that is completely and utterly confusing and has a million different interpretations, how is someone judging that they need to go and find a company that's going to build them a metaverse related thing?
So I think it very much reminds me of what happened with mixed reality a few years ago. There was also a new term that had a definition on Wikipedia for ages, like for 30 years. The term was defined by being everything between certain technologies, like everything in between, and then it was kind of used as a marketing term for augmented reality, to differentiate a new kind of AR where you actually touch things from the one where you only see things. But it was still AR. It just had, it just evolved a bit, and then people started calling it mixed reality.
Yeah. And the thing, and I sort of tend to bang on about this a bit, is just sometimes, you know, as a sector, we get so wrapped up in terminology and we think it's the be all and end all, and everyone gets really, really into it. But it's what you have to think about is, you know, how does the broader market perceive it? What do they understand? And, you know, we can have debate as, you know, is 360 video in a headset? Is that VR? You know, all this sort of stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, does it fulfill a purpose? Does it, you know, benefit someone in some way to do what they need to do? You know, end users don't really care about it. And I think it's quite, the metaverse thing's quite fun because of the amount that's talked about. I just saw an article today about Snoop Dogg, who is creating an NFT of his mansion and putting it into the NFT metaverse, and people can buy land around that and kind of have Snoop Dogg as their neighbor or something.
Okay.
You know, which is pretty funny, right? And poor old Snoop Dogg, I think his music days are a little behind him, so he's looking for other ways to make money. But you see stuff like that, and I kind of understand it. But you know, people who aren't in this industry would just look at that and go, "What is going on? I don't understand it. I just don't understand."
Yeah, but I think in the end, it's just something that is happening over time as the technology evolves and becomes more part of our everyday lives and more integrated into everyday tasks, and not like a separate thing that you do on the weekend or 1 hour a week or something. I think that's really having like it's really like having a digital representation or extension of real life, and I think that's just something that is not happening now because someone said it's happening. It's just I think it's just happening over time, and it will be a while, and then at some point it's just there. And I don't know if we still keep calling it metaverse then or whatever, but maybe it's just, you know, maybe it's just there and normal.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be, you know, the metaverse is not here. The metaverse is very, very slowly evolving, and it will take a long time. So, yeah. But my goodness, I'm sure metaverse, I wonder how many talks or how many sessions the word metaverse comes up multiple times, and much more sincerely than we're using it.
Yeah, so I mean, anyone who's interested in that, I was joking about that earlier when we had our chat on LinkedIn, where I said, go have a look at the talk tomorrow from Amy Peck at, I think, 2:45. It's called "Shut Up About the Metaverse."
Yeah,
I like that. I like that title because I think it's in my head. It was in my head before when people started talking about it. So I'm really looking forward to that talk, and I think a discussion about the metaverse could fill a whole evening. Probably.
Yeah, we could. I could go on and on.
And I think it needs a few beers probably as well.
Yeah, probably does. It does definitely in a dark, dingy bar. Okay, so that's the metaverse craziness. So the other one to touch on from you that I didn't pick up on, off the shelf content. What's your view on that one?
Well, I think a lot of companies and providers have realized that there is certain content that is required over and over. And talking about training in specific, I believe, you know, there are things like work safety, fire safety, cyber security, and stuff like that. Everyone needs it. Every organization needs it. There are fires everywhere. But everyone is building. Hi, Emily. Good to see you. And everyone is building them over and over, and like repeating the same task. And I think what's happening now is that providers realize that it could be worth selling that, and companies who need it realize it could be worth buying it because it's cheaper than building it. So I think there's, considering learning, I think there are probably 80% of tasks have some individualization that is required in organizations, but 20% of other tasks are defined by legal requirements and stuff. And there is not much flexibility in how they could look like. So they are always the same, and then companies can just rent it or buy it, and that is something that I currently see a lot with companies out there, partners that we have that want to provide it on the platform that we have. It's maybe one of the edge trends that and you didn't have it on your list. I see it coming, and I could have mentioned it as a preview maybe for next year, but I kind of see it taking up speed.
And I think, and Emily, we'll introduce you. We'll finish this one off, and then we'll introduce you. And I think also what that interestingly can play into, Thomas, is that low code, no code angle, right? Because you said, that there are so many things that can be standardized, but maybe people want a little bit of customization. So you might have, a library of content across different scenarios, but they want to be able to drop in a company logo. They want to be able to do this, and therefore there's that sort of ability to have library content, but with a small amount of customization, because everyone, even when they say, "Oh yeah, we don't need it customized," they all want it customized.
Yes. At least everyone wants their logo in it.
Everyone wants their logo. They're no, we'll just take it off the shelf. Oh, but can you just make it look like our office? And can you just change the rain to snow? And can we have a big plane come land? But
I think I agree. It's very symbiotic. You kind of need both. But I think also the individualization of the shelf content will go down. Because right now you expect something to cost a lot of money, and then your expectation is that it needs to be very individualized, right? You expect that because you're paying a lot. But I think once you have something on the market already, and you can choose, and you get a quote from someone who offers to build it individually, and it's like 10 times what you would pay for something off the shelf. If the provider says this is not customizable, then I think the controller in your organization will think twice before they allow you to buy something that costs 10 times as much. So I think even that will go down. But anyway, it is symbiotic, and if you have the ability to make customizations also at low cost because you have a low code or no code creation tool, then of course it's possible.
Yeah. Right. Makes sense. Emily, welcome to the session. We're very glad you've made it. Good to see you. I know it's super early for you.
No, there's a couple things going on, but thank you very much for having me today. And so I am Emily Smits. I co-chair the VRARA training committee with James and Thomas. And so I see you guys are diving right in already on some of the, trends, because it's been a little bit that you've been online. So one of the areas I thought I would add then to your point about the no code or low code side is that, yes, you're seeing a lot of trends there where people want to have libraries and want to reuse content. One of the other areas that you're seeing in tandem with that is that people are getting more accustomed to knowing what is an option that would be a fairly, smaller change in a low code type of environment, and what is an option that would potentially be a larger change. So as the industry gets more up to speed, for example, if you're changing things like swapping out the office, then you're swapping out the 3D model associated with that. Depending on the environment, that can be a smaller change, or it can be a large change depending on how that environment is already developed. But the low code offering is definitely an area that we see trends where lots of customers are coming to market saying, yes, let's look at an area where we can have some customization and not build it from scratch, mostly, as Thomas alluded to, based on the cost.
Yeah. And I think one of the factors that is driving this trend is that it's really the content creation is kind of shifting towards being made by people who have the knowledge about the content and not about the technology. So
subject matter experts, right?
Yeah, SMEs, exactly. Yeah. I think the the whole technology aspect, I mean, we are at a VR and AR conference right now, but I think, you know, if someone wants to know about design or learning or whatever, this will also happen more and more in the space of what is the topic. The topic is design or learning or whatever. And we are deep into the technology, but I think the people who use the technology, they will keep thinking more and more about, think more and more about the use case, and the technology goes a little bit into the background. And, you know, talking about learning now in enterprise, it's quite common that learning content has been created by the SMEs for 20, 30 years. I mean, theoretic content, but now it's possible to create practical content the same way you can create theoretic content. And I think people start realizing that, and in the future, the same people who have built the theoretical content now start building the practical content for VR and AR.
Yeah, which will make ultimately for better quality, better quality training in that specific interest. One thing I'd pick up on is the term low code kind of makes me laugh a bit, right? You know, low code, because it's kind of subjective, isn't it? You know, you can say, oh yeah, it's low code. You just need some Unity skills, but really basic Unity skills. Yeah. You know, it's just really basic, you know, entry level Unity skills. You're like, well, you know, when's low code, or just, you know,
it's just a few lines. It's just a few lines of script, but everything else is just drag and drop.
Buttons, and you know, so it's quite funny. I think it's a bit like metaverse. It's a term that is a bit of a buzz term at the moment and can easily be misused. Like, you just need a couple of Unity courses and you'll be fine. So anyway, that's quite funny.
I think that's a good point. There's very, you know, it is a marketing aspect. So on the market, you do see people say, hey, it has low code or there's no code. And then often you would get into it. Maybe you can do a few things and then all of a sudden you have to code.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's full on get in the code, you know. Yeah, so it's quite funny. I think it can be misused. So Emily, we Thomas and I ran through our five trends. Do you want to give us your 5 and then we'll kind of cross-reference?
The 5 trends?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, really you see the low code aspects. You see people who are looking at use cases that are beyond simply the practice. You see people going in for marketing, for sales, different use cases that are there. Virtual first as a core trend, because you're seeing virtualization of training being a primary aspect. Remote use cases where you're having remote training or remote integration is a core trend. And then really just to add another one there, you're seeing the focus where people are trying to put a plan in place for how they're going to use VR and AR.
Okay.
I see that there's some feedback. I'm not sure how to fix this. Hold on. Is that any better? No.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, well, that's cool. So we 3 of ours overlapped, sort of thing, and so we talked about some of the ones that didn't overlap, and then we could talk about we can either talk about soft skills or collaboration as a trend. Which one do you want to pick? Pick one of those, soft skills or collaboration.
I would pick collaboration because that is quite prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's your view?
My view is that what you're seeing is that people, when they're using virtual reality technology, when they're using immersive training, even on a desktop side of things, that because people are virtualizing their training, this ties in my view, to my trend about virtualization. Because they're virtualizing their training, you're seeing that people will say, okay, well, how do I do this that is not a training class where it's going to be passive, that someone goes through or individual to go through, but how can I do this as a collaborative aspect, predominantly because there's a lot more revenue associated with that as well, because you can also do live classes and be able to collaborate together. So there's a higher level of learning, or a different type of learning that can be engaged when you're doing collaboration. And we don't have, one of this, just to add to that, one of that is from the trends from, COVID, that you're not able to do in class. So how are you going to give that learning experience that is going to be delivered virtually?
I also see collaboration, and I had it in the list of my trends, and I think it's important, but at the same time, I think COVID also provided an opportunity to shift some things away from classroom that were never supposed to be classroom-based content, I think. So classroom for practical training was easy to do in the past. At least people thought it was easy to do in comparison, because you could have 20 people in one room and only have to explain it once. But I think another trend in learning, not particularly in VR and AR, but in learning, is individualization, and not individualization of like only by the author, or by the organization, but also from the learner side, so that someone can learn at their own speed and at their own skill level. And I think this is where COVID also provided an opportunity to go individual and not put something that was not supposed to be in a physical classroom in a virtual classroom. And now you have the chance that people are often alone, and they have the chance to do something at the time they desire, at the speed they desire, and at the skill level they have. So both goes hand in hand. It's not a disagreement about collaboration. I just wanted to mention it because I think it's important regarding learning, that not everything is supposed to be collaborative.
Yeah, that is a good point. Also, I'd just like to point out, I think, Emily, you might have come up with a new verb, right? Virtualizing. I think you can probably copyright that, right?
Very good.
Virtualizing training. I think you've got your own unique verb there, so that's rather good. And what about if we think about the real sort of full-on collaboration platforms, so that have seen some interesting progression, partly due to lockdown. So the likes of Spatial, Arthur, Meet and VR, all those sorts of real sort of genuine out and out sort of collaboration platforms. Do you think they've had a slightly false acceleration due to the whole lockdown thing, or do you think it's a natural progression that would have happened anyway? And what do you think of them? You use them?
I personally, go ahead, Emily.
Well, I was just going to say, I think they've got an amplification that has happened because of COVID. This is something that may have transpired more in the future, but what you're seeing now is more of an interest in people wanting to try out new technologies simply because they want to have that collaborative aspect, and they didn't have a choice to do it in person. So you are seeing, in my view, more of an amplification that comes because of COVID. And those platforms a lot of them are predominantly most like on socialization and how do you get together in a group, not really geared towards training aspects. There are others that are geared towards training aspects, but that one is more socialization.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the context. I mean, it's more in that, get together, do stuff,
right.
Whenever I think of Spatial, it's a bit harsh, but whenever I think of Spatial, I just see lots of Post-it notes. Every picture I see of Spatial there's always loads of Post-it notes. You think it must be quite fun actually sticking Post-it notes up in Spatial, but it's probably quite a high technological solution for Post-it notes. But anyway, that's me being very unfair, and anyone from Spatial is annoyed with me saying that, but it's quite funny. Anyway, Thomas, go on.
I think they are valid. Their existence is valid, and of course they got big attention now because of COVID. But I think they keep existing. But I think what's not valid is that, and this is a marketing thing again, is that everyone that is building a platform is trying to advertise it as something that is made for everything. So everyone is saying my platform is for engineering design, for learning, it's for collaboration and for Scrum meetings and whatever. Like it's just for everything. And that is something that's not valid. It's not true. And I can say so because I can speak from my own experience when we were building the platform that we have at 3Spin, because I don't have a professional learning background apart from being the lecturer at the university, but I have a passion for it, like my mother being a teacher and for my business partner, his wife is a teacher. And there are just specific challenges that you have to tackle. And that is true for everything, not just learning. It's also true for design and collaboration and Scrum meetings and everything. So you, at some point, when you want to become really professional with your platform, you need to address these very specific concerns that are valid, that are required for one kind of thing you want to do with it. And everyone has limited resources. So at some point you will come to a decision, and that is at some point happening daily, where you need to decide, do I want to build super realistic avatars where you see the mimics and people are recognized by camera and motion capture and everything, because that is something you expect from collaboration, maybe, where you want to read someone's face and, I don't know, you want to sign a contract and you have a discussion before and whatever. And on the other hand, you have to decide, do I have people who want to know what their learning success was? So do I need to build analytics features maybe? Do I need a dashboard, and do I need an objective system? So you will stand before this decision every day. Do I need something that is more important for collaboration, or do I need something that is more important for design or for whatever? And I think we are now at exactly that point where tools, platforms, software, whatever you want to call it, are drifting apart from each other, chosen by someone who really wants to do one specific thing. So I think providers are now faced with a decision they need to make. They cannot be everything. I think that's also a big trend that we will encounter more in the coming years.
It's interesting you say that, because I had a chat with CEO of a company, just trying to look up the name, who was doing exactly what you say there, Thomas, which is really zoning in on one very specific kind of use case to kind of not say we do everything. It's a chap called from Remio, Jos van der Westhausen. And it was interesting talking to him, because he literally, what they're doing, they have a collaboration platform, but what they are completely and utterly focused on is team building. So they're doing team building exercises using VR. They'll send out the VR headsets. You all get together, you do your thing, you send back the headsets, but they're not trying to be, oh, and by the way, you can also do meetings. You can also do this. They're going very much down that route. In the future, they may look to broaden out, but at the moment, they're very, very specific and saying, this is just about team building. We're not saying you can go and design, or you can go and, do whatever. It's just this one thing. So I think you're right. Yeah. I think picking a thing that you say it's right for, as opposed to trying to cover off any things. Right. So listen, we're on a 5-minute warning. So I think the last one that we should pick out is probably, seeing as it was sort of came up, is soft skills. So I'll give my quick view, and then we can round out on that. But I mean, soft skills, I think, is really interesting. My sort of initial background in VR was very much in those more procedural, process-driven hard skills. And I was a little disparaging of soft skills, actually, probably 12 to 18 months ago. It's like, well, it's hard to measure. It's not really the right environment. I was very much in that, measure everything, measure a movement. Did someone do these 8 actions? Therefore, if they did them in the right order, how long did it take? Even if it's sort of a bit of biometrics coming in. So I was kind of like, well, I don't really see the role of soft skills. Actually, over these past sort of 12, 18 months, I've changed my view, because there is great value you can put into soft skills. You can also, by bringing in biometrics, you can be tracking as dilation of pupils, where they're looking. You can track
intent recognition.
Yeah, and suddenly it's like, well, wow, we put someone in that position, and they were a lot calmer than we expected, or they freaked out even though they looked calm, whatever. So and you think of diversity and inclusion, all those sorts of things, there's definitely a lot of interesting value in it. I think it has to develop, but I think what has really happened is there's so many companies who are looking at VR in the soft skills area. There's definitely been a massive upturn in interest from companies saying, well, can we do leadership training? Can we diversity and inclusion is the most top of the list for everyone at the moment. So I think it's been a big shift.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the reasons is that on the one hand, it's super expensive to do soft skill training in reality and hard to simulate, because you would need you need actors that can act professionally to simulate a specific, argument you're having with your superior or something. Really hard to do. And then also it's very, very limited, because even if you had these actors, what happens is everyone is flown somewhere to participate in that training. Again, classroom, right? And then they all sit in that room, and then the actor would go or the trainer would go okay, any volunteers? And then people would, not me. And then maybe one person goes in front of the group and participates in this role play, and all the others were just watching. And I'm not learning something only by watching. That's the whole point of VR and AR, to make it practical and really learning by doing.
Yeah.
So it provides a lot of value, because people can learn individually and spend more time and don't have to feel bad because they are doing it in front of a group. Yeah. And at the same time, it's less expensive. So two things come together that make it inevitable that soft skill training will shift towards VR and 360 and whatever.
Yeah. Emily, you get the last word. Or words.
Words. For soft skill training, there's more people in that space who are figuring out how they can do it in a repeatable manner. Because the nature with soft skills is that, unlike practical skills where you're trying to teach a specific way of doing it, there are many different ways in the soft skills that you could have a scenario play out. So it's more is about the experience and about the analytics of the person. And so it's an interesting trend, and I think we're going to see more focus areas that, as Thomas alluded to, where you see companies who maybe say, I do VR and AR, experiential learning, and now they're really honing in on particular areas, because the market is starting to mature and recognize that there's different use cases and you need different skill sets.
Okay, we are being told to wrap it up now.
We are done. Thank you all very much. It's always great to chat with you guys. Lots of fun. If anyone wants to come along to the training committee meetings, please do. The schedule gets sent out regularly. We'd love you to join. It's always good discussions. And thank you very much for joining. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Emily. And see you all soon.
Pleasure to see everybody. Take care. See you at the training meetings.